This video here by Ashley Neal, or rather one of his viewers that sent it to Ashley, and Ashley has made some comments on it, I'll link it below, is a great example of everything that is wrong with the attitudes of drivers in the UK today. So don't be either of these drivers, but especially don't be the driver of the Range Rover. You can see that this is a narrow road. It's not a single track road, which is an important part for this video. I've muted Ashley with respect to him. You can watch his full video and his thoughts on it. But as you can see, it is not a single track road, but it is a very narrow road. And you can see that cars are parked all down the one-hand side. You can see that two cars have come up here and obviously they can't get past each other. And there's a bit of a standoff. Now, as we progress this a little bit, you can see that this Range Rover driver has gestured, "What do you expect me to do?" But actually, if we go back a little bit, you can see that even before we get to that point there, the Range Rover driver would have been able to see that there was this perspective driver coming forwards and the Range Rover would not be able to get past because there's no space. So we get to this point where the Range Rover driver is like, "What do you expect me to do? Because I can't get past." But the simple thing here is this Range Rover driver should not have come forward as far as they did. They should have waited behind. Why do I say that? Well, because, A, it's common courtesy, but also, whilst no one has any absolute right of way on the roads in England and Wales, throughout the UK, there is no absolute right of way. A lot of people think there is. I've got right of way. You don't. It's not a right of way. No one has right of way. But you should give way. And so if there's a rule that says you should give way and there's a collision or something happens and you end up in court, and trust me, I've been there in court making these arguments and I say, you know, this driver did not follow the highway code. They didn't do this. They didn't do that. Therefore, they are to blame either for the collision or whatever it might be. In this situation here, the Range Rover should absolutely have given way. There's a bit about the pavements in a minute. I'll come back to that in a minute. I support Ashley's comments here, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But Ashley also points to this, which doesn't apply here, but it's the only bit that gives us some indication. Single track roads, these are only wide enough for one vehicle. Now, it's not strictly applicable here because it's not a single track road, but it gives us some indication because it might as well be a single track road because of the way the cars are parked and you can't get past. They might have a passing place, and if you see a vehicle coming towards you and the driver behind wants to overtake, pull into a passing place or wait opposite a passing place, give way to vehicles coming uphill if you can, if necessary reverse until you find a passing place to let other vehicles pass. Now, as we find out, there's another vehicle behind this perspective vehicle here, and so this whole thing makes for there's the vehicle behind, makes for quite a difficult situation. But this standoff goes on for quite some time. And eventually the perspective driver reverses back. But what we then even have, which exacerbates the attitudes here completely, is we have the passenger of this Range Rover even get out and start. I mean, you can see behind the Range Rover, there is space. I'm pointing like as if you can see, you can't see. There is space behind the Range Rover. They could reverse and get out of the way because the vehicles are on their side of the road. But notwithstanding, we get the passenger get out, thinking that they are entitled, they are in the right, and they are going to film how badly this driver is driving here, and it's all their fault. But it isn't. But this perspective driver does have the sense to reverse back, take the sensible approach, and try to then allow the Range Rover through. I don't think they should have had to do that, and there are some alternatives. I think that the Range Rover should have been the one to reverse back. But you can also see when we got to this standoff here, there was the possibility of just taking the wheels up onto the curb and going past. Now, it is an offence to drive over the pavement unless you're going onto a property. It's an offence to drive on it with the intent of parking, etc. But we also have, if a driver were to be prosecuted for doing that, we'd have a test as to whether it's really in the public interest to prosecute for that offence. So sensibly, if you've got two vehicles that are here butted up nose to nose and they're just nobody is going to give way and the Range Rover is not going to reverse back. I can't really see that it'd be in the public interest to prosecute this driver for just taking the wheels up to the curb to get past, so they could get past. There's no pedestrians on there. It's quite obviously clear. There's quite obviously no danger there. I don't think that would pose a danger at all. I don't think the police would have any interest in prosecuting that whatsoever, and it would just resolve this situation. Now, obviously, if there were pedestrians there, you wouldn't do that. And technically, it's still an offence. But as I say, I can't see the police doing anything about that at all. But as for the Range Rover driver, he is the one, in my view, at most risk of a prosecution for careless or inconsiderate driving. I don't think the police would do anything about this. I don't think it's worth wasting your time sending this to the police. It's just, as Ashley would put it, a non-event, or it could have been a non-event. It becomes a non-event when both drivers just resolve it and go about their business, and no need to report these things to the police, etc. But if we were looking at it, the Range Rover driver is the one at most risk of a prosecution for careless or inconsiderate driving, because this includes such things as turning into the path of another vehicle, or driving too closely, or just not allowing another vehicle the space that they really should do in a situation like this. So I'll go back to the beginning and I'll show you why I say that. So we just see the opening of this video coming out here. This perspective is driving around this corner. Clearly, there's no bit beforehand. As soon as they turn into this road, there's vehicles on the side. There's arguably a bit of space here, but that's on the opposite side of the road. So even if somebody were to say, because I can see someone in the comments saying already, they should park over there. Now, I don't agree with that, because when we get to this point here, this is the last point at which the prospective driver could move to on the right-hand side of the road. But that would be wrong, because then they'll be on the wrong side of the road. But that would be the last point at which they could do so. And at this point, you can't even yet see the Range Rover. It's only when we get to this point here, you can see the Range Rover, but the Range Rover, if you can see the Range Rover can see you, or they should be able to. It's a bit like those signs on lorries. If you can't see my mirrors, I can't see you. It's the most sensible thing you'll ever hear. Just like when you're reversing, people find reversing difficult, but if it's not going to hit it in your mirror, it's not going to hit it, because it's a visual representation of what's actually happening. So if you can see the Range Rover driver should be able to see you. So the Range Rover driver at this point here should be able to see this driver, realize that they won't get through, and pull over. I'm pointing again as though you can see me. You can't. I'll use my mouse instead so you can see. The Range Rover driver should be moving into this space here just before those vehicles. And even if they get two vehicles in and then realize they can't go anywhere, they then should carefully reverse back and get out of the way, because they just keep coming. You can see quite clearly here, the Range Rover driver can see this driver, and coming through, there is no space, they won't get by, and instead they just keep on coming regardless. And they come right up to here. So they are so entitled that they insist on coming through. This is everything wrong. So don't be this driver. I think both parties were a little bit stubborn in this whole video. Both parties could have made it a lot simpler. But if I were to choose, and that is what I do sometimes, I can't sit on the fence all the time, I would say the Range Rover driver should have stayed back, held back, or if necessary, reversed back. You don't have to agree with me, but that's what I think a court would rule if, for whatever reason, this ended up in court. It was their side that was blocked. They had the space. They could have moved. They could have pulled in. They could have reversed back more easily, more safely, etc. So let me know what you think in the comments below. This will be an interesting one. I'll link Ashley's video below. You can go there for Ashley's views on it as well. I support what he says. So for more on this, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.